let me get to Mike Florio, who joins us now on loan from ProFootballTalk.com. Mike, a couple of things here. Let me start with what the Redskins are doing. That I guess Daniel Snyder said that if you're a season ticket holder, you will get injury updates before anybody else does.
And, I would have loved to have been in the meeting where they're coming up with ideas for making the in-game experience better than being at home, because that's the idea now. It needs to be better so you'll invest the money to go to the game. And I don't know who thought, hey, let's give injury updates minutes before the rest of the world knows them. I don't know how that's going to attract anyone to come to the game, apart from the fact that the NFL may not think this is the best approach, because the NFL requires that information to be disseminated to the media as soon as possible. So it's not like you're even allowed to give them a heads up. But that doesn't seem like the kind of thing that's going to get that person who's on the fence about spending $100 a ticket to show up for a game just because they're going to find out whether or not somebody's got a pulled hamstring a few seconds before everyone else knows about it.
Well, they've tried to create this in-game experience for those who go to games. It's that those who stay home have a better experience. I mean, it's kind of weird how the NFL, it's become better, easier, more enjoyable to stay at home than it is to go there. And I don't know, aside from letting you listen in on the headsets like NASCAR does.
Bingo. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way to make it truly better, to give the fans an experience that is unique to showing up at the stadium. And I've heard talk about that for years. That's the way to ensure that these stadiums are going to be full. And, Dan, now that they've gotten rid of, well, technically suspended the blackout policy, which means they've gotten rid of it, there's more and more pressure to come up with ways to get fans to show up. And that's the ultimate way. You give fans access to what's being said between the coaches and the quarterbacks and the coaches and whoever's got the green dot on their helmet on the defensive side of the ball. Now you're giving me something that I'll pay money to go be a part of.
Has this been proposed?
There's been talk about it, but you could imagine that there would be multiple coaches who would be concerned about those communications being overheard. So, I don't think it's going to get real far. This is one of those changes where they send the coaches out to the golf course before the owners vote on it, if it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I get it, but there's no way that – can you imagine Bill Belichick saying, yeah, I'd be more than happy to share all the information. We're going to know your codes. And what would stop somebody being in the stadium having a listening device who works for the opposing team?
Exactly. Now, it wouldn't be easy to process all that in real time, but you surely could pick up something from being able to hear those things that would be useful to preparations. That's right. You're sending a scout to the game just to buy a ticket and pay for the headset so they can hear everything that's being said between the coach and the quarterback.
What coach-quarterback conversation would you want to hear most?
And anything with Belichick. I want to see if he, like when he's talking to somebody other than the media, if he speaks more than in one-syllable words, and, does he get colorful, does he get animated? And I definitely want to hear, not that Belichick's the one talking to Brady, but then that becomes part of it. Hey, they put pressure on the individual coaches. We want you to be the one talking to the quarterback because it's going to sound better for the fans if it's coming from the head coach instead of from some guy upstairs that nobody knows who he is.
The Confederate flag has come down, but the Redskins continue to keep their name. They dodge it for another year. Now, I'm curious about this endgame, Mike, and this is probably 2 years ago when I was told this, that if Daniel Snyder wants to move back into Washington, D.C., that the endgame for him, his out would be, we'll help you with public financing with the new stadium. You must change the name. Is there any validity to that?
Yeah, I think there is. And recently there was a report that the Obama administration would make that a condition to a return to D.C. Now, here's the reality. The Obama administration is going to be long gone by the time that the franchise would go back to D.C. But a lot of it's going to depend on who's in charge of the White House when this would go down, who's in charge of Congress when this would go down, how much pressure would be added then. I mean, I still feel like the name's going to change inevitably. I just don't know when. Whether it's next month, next year, whether it's 50 years, at some point the name's going to change. When you think of how much society's changed in the last 30 or 40 years, and if you have any doubts, just watch some of the reruns on the Game Show Network. In the next 30 or 40 years, that name's going to change. It's just how and when and what's the final straw that makes it happen.
Yeah, it feels like there's a bigger play eventually there for Daniel Snyder that, hey, they're forcing me to change the name for me to bring the team back to Washington, D.C. We're talking to Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. The Brady backroom dealing, channeling here, and you said something interesting. At first I said, what are we waiting for? And then there was a report out of Boston that there was negotiations going on behind the scenes. You said something different. Are there negotiations going on?
Well, I mean, theoretically, there's a possibility that this could be settled, and these suspensions under the various NFL policies from time to time are resolved without a full-blown appeal process or any type of court challenge. I just think in this case it's going to be so hard to find a middle ground because by all appearances, Dan, Tom Brady is determined to be exonerated and determined to fight until the end result is a zero-game suspension. On the other hand, think about Roger Goodell's experiences the past few years. He has been repeatedly overturned by someone else when he's gone too far with a suspension. And no one ever says anything about it. No one says the commissioner doesn't know what he's doing, he's unfit. No one says anything when he imposes a suspension and someone else says you went too far. But if he doesn't go far enough, like last year with Ray Rice, what happens? Out come the pitchforks and the torches. So I don't know that Roger Goodell can afford to pull back. It's almost like he has to let this process go forward. It has to go to court, and it has to get knocked down by someone else, and then he has to be able to say, I take that ruling as a badge of honor because I went farther than the court system. I'm protecting the integrity of the game. So that's really the challenge here. Tom Brady's desire to have no games and the necessity that Roger Goodell not be perceived is not going far enough.
But he goes too far all the time, right? I mean, his track record shows that he always overpunishes except for with Ray Rice.
He's 0-4 in the last 4 high-profile suspensions where someone else came in and reviewed his work. Going back to the bounty scandal, all the suspensions for the players overturned. The Ray Rice indefinite suspension overturned. The Adrian Peterson suspension vacated. The Greg Hardy suspension cut from 10 games to 4. And no one ever criticizes him for that. That's what amazes me. No one ever says, oh, boy, the commissioner's too heavy-handed. The commissioner gets these wrong. He's not applying the rules fairly. People just shrug and move on. And I think that's why, from a PR standpoint, it becomes very difficult for the commissioner to pull back in any way on this 4-game suspension. And now what you're going to have, if it stays at 4 games, you're going to have the comparisons to the Greg Hardy outcome, with criticism coming either way. People saying, how can you equate what Tom Brady did to what Greg Hardy did? And people saying, well, how can you equate what Greg Hardy did to what Tom Brady did? And I don't see a good way out of this for the commissioner, regardless of what the outcome is.
Best case scenario. Is there a best case scenario for all involved?
No, I really don't think there is, because I don't think there's a vehicle for working out a resolution that everyone would accept. I mean, a 4-game fine, how would the public react to that, though? If the 4-game suspension becomes a 4-game fine and Tom Brady plays 4 games for free, he still gets to play, but he's not getting paid. And when you consider he's got a below-market salary, he's only going to lose, like $1.8 million to play 4 games for free. But I don't know how the public would accept that. And see, that's the thing. Yeah. All these decisions now seem to be so driven by PR. I don't know how the NFL confidently makes a decision that would entail taking that risk of stepping into another Ray Rice firestorm where everyone comes out and says, oh, my gosh, you went too easy on the Golden Boy quarterback, that's the final straw. We need a new commissioner.
Is Brady's guilt secondary to the PR?
Well, I think the PR is driving everything right now for the NFL. From Brady's perspective, it's the determination to be proven innocent, and that's where the commissioner's in the minefield. How do we balance this? There's a report out there that a lot of people have criticized for many reasons, 243 pages with plenty of flaws. Do you abandon that? Do you step back? Do you hammer Brady? I think that PR took over early on, and actually getting it right is secondary to how people are going to react to it.
Yeah, who's got more to lose, though, Brady or the commissioner?
Well, I'd say the commissioner.
Really?
Because, look, is anybody going to feel any differently about Tom Brady, even if he gets, air quotes, exonerated? You're still going to have the Patriots fans that think he's innocent, and everybody else is going to think he's guilty, and he's never going to get away from that. It's going to be a permanent part of his legacy, whether he plays in those 4 games or not. For Goodell, if he doesn't go far enough and we get back to the same point where we were last September, it's easy to forget because it's been 9-10 months now. I mean, it was pretty dicey there for a couple of weeks. He was in hiding. There really was a sense that this could all snowball out of control and he'd be out of a job. And it all started because he didn't go far enough with a punishment. Whereas when he goes too far, we never say anything. So that's a no-brainer. If you're the commissioner, you're never going to fail to go too far. You're always going to go too far. And if it gets overturned on appeal, big deal. I still got my job.
Do you think Roger Goodell makes the Hall of Fame one day?
Well, Paul Tagliabue's not in. I think it's going to be hard to do. The difference, though, is they've now got this new category where there's the contributor. You know, that's how Ron Wolf and Bill Polian have gotten in this year. So I think it makes it a little bit easier for non-players. But I think, there's still many chapters left in the book. But if he'd retire right now, I don't think he's getting in.
Well, you can contribute. Does it have to be in a good way?
Well, it all depends on how we determine what a good contribution is. You were talking earlier about how much money the teams are making, and if the owners had a vote on the Hall of Fame, he'd probably be the first bust that you see walking through the door.
Good to talk to you, Mike. Training camp's coming up. All right, thank you, Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk.